Hi guys, welcome to Chapter 10, first section of All Quiet on the Western Front. When we last left Chapter 9, Paul had faced death by doing hand-to-hand combat with a French soldier in a trench. He had faced his own mortality, he had changed, and then he had forgotten again. And this constant barrage of beating down and bringing back up is part of what's also physically demanding, but also playing with his mind and his heart and his spirit. You know, we're slowly watching the human spirit die out from exhaustion and from fear and from having to confront your humanity over and over again. So in this chapter 10, section 1, we're still looking for the larger ideas, what the author is trying to tell us, the mood, Paul's point of view, contrast, imagery, and all of the things that we've discussed so far, irony, etc. Okay, so chapter 10 on page 231 of this book. You may have a different book, you may have a different pagination. So, we have dropped in for a good job. 8 of us have to guard a village that has been abandoned because it is being shelled too heavily. In particular, we have to watch the supply dump, as that is not empty yet. We're supposed to provision ourselves from the same store. That means we're supposed to give ourselves food and stuff. We are just the right people for that. Kat, Albert, Mueller, Jaden, Dettering. Our whole gang is there. High as dead, though. But we are mighty lucky all the same. All the other squads have had more casualties than we have. We select as a dugout a reinforced concrete cellar in which steps lead down from above. The entrance is protected by a separate concrete wall. Now we develop an immense industry. It means we're looking for stuff to do. This is an opportunity not only to stretch one's legs, but to stretch one's soul also. We make the best use of such opportunities. The war is too desperate to allow us to be sentimental for long. That is only possible so long as things are not going too badly. After all, we cannot afford to be anything but matter of fact. So matter of fact, indeed, that I often shudder when a thought from the days before the war comes momentarily into my head. But it does not stay long. We have to take things as lightly as we can, so we make the most of every opportunity, and nonsense stands stark and immediately besides horror. So here's a great example of contrast. So when we do nonsense things, we tell stupid jokes, we fool around with each other, stands totally opposite in contrast to horror of war. It cannot be otherwise. That is how we hearten ourselves. So we zealously set to work to create an idyll. That means a way to relax and sit back and do nothing. An idyll of eating and sleeping, of course. The floor is first covered with mattresses, which we haul in from the houses. This is a burned out village where people no longer live, so they bring in a bunch of mattresses so that they can sleep on actual mattresses. Only in the middle of the floor is there any clear space. When we furnish ourselves with blankets and eiderdowns, those are down comforters, luxurious soft affairs, there is plenty of everything to be had in the village. Albert and I find a mahogany bed, which can be taken to pieces with a sky of blue silk and a lace coverlet. We sweat like monkeys moving it in, but a man cannot let a thing like that slip, and it would certainly be shot to pieces in a day or two. So they go into somebody's house and they steal an actual bed with a frame and everything else so that they can feel some kind of luxury. And this is again, that idea that certain laws are not in effect at some point. You have to break a law because there's a higher moral law or a higher comfort law in order to survive. Kat and I do a little patrolling through the houses. In very short time, we have collected a dozen eggs and 2 pounds of fairly fresh butter. Suddenly, there is a crash in the drawing room, and an iron stove hurtles through the wall past us and on, a yard from us out through the wall behind. 2 holes. It comes from the house opposite where a shell has just landed. The swine, grimaces Kat, and we continue our search. All at once, we prick up our ears, hurry across, and suddenly stand petrified. There, running up and down in a little sty, are two live suckling pigs. That means two baby pigs. We rub our eyes and look once again to make certain. Yes, they are still there. We seize hold of them, no doubt about it. Two real young pigs. This will make a grand feed. About 20 yards from our dugout, there is a small house that was used as an officer's billet. In the kitchen is an immense fireplace with two ranges, pots and pans and kettles, everything, even to a stack of small chopped wood in an outhouse, a regular cook's paradise. Two of our fellows have been out in the fields all the morning hunting for potatoes, carrots, and green peas. We are quite uppish and sniff at the tinned stuff in the supply dump. We want fresh vegetables. In the dining room, there are already 2 heads of cauliflower. The suckling pigs are slaughtered. Cat sees to them. Cat kills them. We want to make potato cakes to go with the roast, but we cannot find a grater for the potatoes. However, the difficulty is soon got over. With a nail, we punch a lot of holes in a pot lid, and there we have a grater. These fellows put on thick gloves to protect their fingers against the grater. 2 others peel the potatoes, and the business gets going. Cat takes charge of the suckling pigs, the carrots, the peas, and the cauliflower. He even mixes a white sauce for the cauliflower. I fry the pancakes 4 at a time. After 10 minutes, I get the knack of tossing the pan so that the pancakes, which are done on one side, sail up, turn in the air, and are caught again as they come down. The suckling pigs are roasted whole. We all stand round them as before an altar. So that's a simile about, the church of real food in this case. In the meantime, we receive visitors, a couple of wireless men who are generously invited to the feed. They sit in the living room where there is a piano. One of them plays and the other sings. Anderwieser, I'm not sure what the song is. He sings feelingly, but with a rather Saxon accent. That means English. All the same, it moves us as we stand at the fireplace preparing the good things. Then we begin to realize we are in for trouble. The observation balloons have spotted the smoke from our chimney, and the shells start to drop on us. They are those damned spraying little daisy cutters that make only a small hole and scatter widely close to the ground. They keep dropping closer and closer all around us. Still, we cannot leave the grub in the lurch. The grub is the food. A couple of splinters whiz through the top of the kitchen window. The roast is ready, but frying the pancakes is getting difficult. The explosions come so fast that the splinters strike again and again against the wall of the house and sweep in through the window. Whenever I hear a shell coming, I drop down on one knee with the pan and the pancakes and duck behind the wall of the window. Immediately afterwards, I aim up again, and I am up again and going on with the frying. The Saxon stops singing. A fragment has smashed the piano. And there's another metaphor, or a symbol, if you will, how war destroys even the music of life. At last, everything is ready, and we organize the transport of it back to the dugout. After the next explosion, 2 men dash across the 50 yards to the dugout with the pots of vegetables. We see them disappear. The next shot. Everyone ducks, and then 2 more trot off, each with a big can of the finest grade coffee, and reach the dugout before the next explosion. Then Cat and Crop seize the masterpiece, the big dish with the brown, roasted, sucking pigs. A screech, a knee bend, and away they race over the 50 yards of open country. I stay to finish my last 4 pancakes. Twice I have to drop to the floor. After all, it means 4 pancakes more, and they are my favorite dish. Then I grab the plate with the great pile of cakes and squeeze myself behind the house door. A hiss, a crash, and I gallop off the plate, clamped against my chest with both hands. I am almost in. There is a rising screech. I bound. I run like a deer. Sweep round the wall. Fragments clatter against the concrete. I tumble down the cellar steps. My elbows are skinned, but I have not lost a single pancake, nor even upset the plate. At 2 o'clock we start the meal. It lasts till 6. We drink coffee until 6:30. Officers' coffee from the supply dump, and smoke officers' cigars and cigarettes, also from the supply dump. Punctually at 6:30 we begin supper. At 10 o'clock, we throw the bones of the sucking pigs outside the door. Then there is cognac and rum. These are very expensive liquors at the time. Also from the blessed supply dump. And once again, long, fat cigars with belly bands. Jaden says that it lacks only one thing: girls from an officer's brothel. A brothel is a whorehouse. Late in the evening, we hear mewing. A little gray cat sits in the entrance. We entice it in and we give it something to eat. And that wakes up our own appetites once more. Still chewing, we lie down to sleep. But the night is bad. We have eaten too much fat. Fresh baby pig is very griping to the bowels. There is an everlasting coming and going in the dugout. That means everybody's going out to poop all night because they've had months of eating nothing, and now all of a sudden they're eating fatty foods, a lot of it too. And isn't this ironic? They can't even enjoy basic food. 2, 3 men with their pants down are always sitting about outside and cursing. I have been out 9 times myself. About 4 o'clock in the morning, we reach a record. All 11 men, guards, and visitors are squatting outside. Burning houses stand out like torches against the night. Shells lumber across and crash down. Munition columns tear along the street. On one side, the supply dump has been ripped open. In spite of all the flying fragments, the drivers of the munition columns pour in like a swarm of bees, simile, and pounce on the bread. We let them have their own way. If we said anything, it would only mean a good hiding for us. That means they would beat us up if we said something about them stealing the food. So we go differently about it. We explain that we are the guard and so know our way about. We get hold of the tin stuff and exchange it for things we are short of. What does it matter anyhow? In a while, we'll all be blown to pieces. For ourselves, we take some chocolate from the depot and eat it in slabs. Kat says it is good for loose bowels. Almost a fortnight passes. A fortnight is 2 weeks. Thus, in eating, drinking, and roaming about, no one disturbs us. The village gradually vanishes under the shells, and we lead a charmed life. So long as any part of the supply dump still stands, we don't worry. We desire nothing better than to stay here till the end of the war. Jaden has become so fastidious, that means neat, that he only half smokes his cigars. With his nose in the air, he explains to us that he was brought up that way. And Kat is most cheerful. In the morning, his first call is, "Emile, bring in the caviar and coffee." We put on extraordinary airs. That means we act like we're hoity-toity. Every man treats the other as his valet, bounces him, and gives him orders. "There's something itching under my foot, Crop, my man. Catch that louse at once, says Lear, poking out his leg at him like a ballet girl, and Albert drags him up the stairs by the foot. "Jaden? What? Stand at ease, Jaden. And what's more, don't say what, say yes, sir. Now, Jaden?" Jaden retorts in the well-known phrase from the Gut von Berlichingen, with which he is always free. I'm pretty sure that means he curses him out with a hand gesture. After 8 more days, we receive orders to go back. The palmy days are over. 2 big motor lorries take us away. They are stacked high with planks. That means boards. Nevertheless, Albert and I erect on top our 4-poster bed, complete with blue silk canopy, mattress, and 2 lace coverlets. And behind it is the head. At the head is stowed a bag full of choicest edibles. That means food. We often dip into it, and the tough ham sausages, the tins of liver sausages, the conserves, the boxes of cigarettes rejoice our hearts. Each man has a bag to himself. Crop and I have rescued 2 big red armchairs as well. They stand inside the bed, and we sprawl back in them as in a theater box. Above us swells the silken cover like a baldaquin. Not exactly sure what that is. Each man has a long cigar in his mouth, and thus, from aloft, we survey the scene. So from above everybody else, we just sit back and enjoy and observe everybody else. Between us stands a parrot cage that we found for the cat. She is coming with us and lies in the cage before her saucer of meat and purrs. Slowly the lorries, those are the trucks, roll down the road. We sing. Behind us, shells are sending up fountains from the new, utterly abandoned village. A few days later, we are sent to evacuate a village. On the way, we meet the fleeing inhabitants trundling their goods and chattels, that means belongings, along with them in wheelbarrows, in perambulators. Perambulators are baby carriages. And on their backs. Their figures are bent, their faces full of grief, despair, haste, and resignation. The children hold on to their mother's hands, and often an older girl leads the little ones, who stumble onward and are forever looking back. A few carry miserable looking dolls. All are silent as they pass us by. We are marching in columns. The French certainly will not fire in a town in which there are still inhabitants, but a few minutes later the air screams, the earth heaves, cries ring out, a shell has landed among our rear squad. We scatter and fling ourselves down on the ground, but at that moment I feel the instinctive alertness leave me, which before, has always made me do unconsciously the right thing under fire. The thought leaps up with a terrible, throttling fear. You are lost. Again, this is really important. You are lost, the lost generation. And the next moment, a blow sweeps like a whip over my left leg. I hear Albert cry out. He is beside me. Quick up, Albert, I yell, for we are lying unsheltered in the open field. He staggers up and runs. I keep beside him. We have to get over a hedge. It is higher than we are. Krop seizes a branch. I heave him up by the leg. He cries out. I give him a swing and he flies over. With one bound, I follow him and fall into a ditch that lies behind the hedge. Our faces are smothered with duckweed and mud, but the cover is good. So we wade in up to our necks. Whenever a shell whistles, we duck our heads under the water. After we have done this a dozen times, I am exhausted. Let's get away or I'll fall in and drown, groans Albert. Where has it got you? I asked him. In the knee, I think. Can you run? I think. Then out. We make for the ditch beside the road and, stooping, run along it. The shelling follows us. The road leads towards the munition dump. If that goes up, there won't be so much as a bootlace left of us, so we change our plan and run diagonally across country. Albert begins to drag. You go, I'll come on after, he says, and throws himself down. I seize him by the arm and shake him. Up, Albert! If you once lie down, you'll never get any farther. Quick, I'll hold you up. At last we reach a small dugout. Krop pitches in and I bandage him up. The shot is just a little above his knee. Then I take a look at myself. My trousers are bloody and my arm too. Albert binds up my wound with his field dressing. Already he is no longer able to move his leg, and we both wonder how we managed to get this far. Fear alone made it possible. We should have run even if our feet had been shot off. We would have run on the stumps. I can still crawl a little. I call out to a passing ambulance wagon which picks us up. It is full of wounded. There is an army medical lance corporal with it who sticks an anti-tetanus needle in our chests. At the dressing station, we arrange matters so that we lie side by side. They give us a thin soup, which we spoon down greedily and scornfully, because we are accustomed to better times, but are hungry all the same. Now for home, Albert, I say. Let's hope so, he replies. I only wish I knew what I've got. The pain increases. The bandages burn like fire. We drink and drink, one glass of water after another. How far above the knee am I hit? Asks Krop. At least 4 inches, Albert, I answer. Actually, it is perhaps 1. I've made up my mind, he says after a while. If they take off my leg, I'll put an end to it. I won't go through life as a cripple. So we lie there with our thoughts and wait. In the evening, we are hauled onto the chopping block. I am frightened and think quickly what I ought to do. For everyone knows that the surgeons in the dressing stations amputate on the slightest provocation. Onto the great business that is much simpler than complicated patching. I think of Kemmeridge. Whatever happens, I will not let them chloroform me, even if I have to crack a couple of their skulls. It is all right. The surgeon pokes around in the wound, and a blackness comes up before my eyes. Don't carry on so, he says gruffly, and hacks away. The instruments gleam in the bright light like marvelous animals. Another simile. The pain is insufferable. 2 orderlies hold my arms fast, but I break loose with one of them and try to crash into the surgeon's spectacles just as he notices and springs back. Chloroform the scoundrel, he roars madly. Then I become quiet. Pardon me, Herr Doctor. I will keep still, but do not chloroform me. Well, now, he cackles. That means he laughs like a witch. Ha 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 ha. And takes up his instrument again. He is a fair fellow. That means he's got light hair and light eyes. Not more than 30 years old, with scars and disgusting gold spectacles. Now I see that he is tormenting me. He is merely raking about in the room and looking up surreptitiously at me over his glasses. So now this guy is torturing him on purpose. He's a sadist. And this is, mind you, this is pre-Nazi. This is before the doctors in Nazi Germany. So this is what's leading up to it. And this is what the author wants you to know historically. My hands squeeze around the grips. I'll kick the bucket before he will get a squeak out of me. He has fished out a piece of shell and tosses it to me. Apparently he is pleased at my self-control, for he now sets my leg carefully in splints and says, "Tomorrow you'll be off home." Then I am put in plaster, like they put a cast on him. When I am back again with Krop, I tell him apparently a hospital train comes in tomorrow morning. We must work the Army Medical Sergeant Major so that we can keep together, Albert. I managed to slip the Sergeant Major 2 of my cigars with belly bands and then tip the word to him. He smells the cigars and says, "Have you got any more of them?" "Another good handful," I say. "And my comrade?" I point to Krop. "He has some as well. We might possibly be glad to hand them to you out of the window of the hospital train in the morning." He understands, of course, smells them once again and says, "Done." We cannot get a minute's sleep all night. One of them sings hymns in a high cracked tenor before he begins to gurgle. Another has crept out of his bed to the window. He lies in front of it as though he wants to look out for the last time. Our stretchers stand on the platform. We wait for the train. It rains and the station has no roof. Our blankets are thin. We have waited already 2 hours. The sergeant major looks after us like a mother. The army has become his mom. Although I feel pretty bad, I do not let our scheme out of my mind. Casually, I let him see the packet and give him 1 cigar in advance. In exchange, the sergeant major covers us over with a waterproof sheet. "Albert, old man," I suddenly bethink myself, "our 4-poster and the cat. And the club chairs," he adds. They're remembering all the good times they had in the basement with all that food and mattresses. "Yes, the club chairs with the red plush. In the evening we used to sit in them like lords, and intended later on to let them out by the hour." That means, have people pay to sit in them for an hour. 1 cigarette per hour. It might have turned into a regular business, a real good living. And our bags of grub, too, Albert. That means food. We grow melancholy. That means sad. We might have made some use of the things. If only the train left 1 day later, Cat would be sure to find us and bring us the stuff. What damned hard luck. In our bellies there is gruel. Mean hospital stuff. Gruel is bad food that is just kind of wet oatmeal-y type food. And in our bags, roast pork. But we are so weak that we cannot work up any more excitement about it. The stretchers are sopping wet by the time the train arrives in the morning. The sergeant major sees to it that we are put in the same car. There is a crowd of Red Cross nurses. Krop is stowed in below. I am lifted up and told to get into the bed above him. Good God, I exclaim suddenly. What is it? I cast a glance at the bed. It's covered with clean snow-white linen that even has got the marks of the iron still on it, and my shirt has gone 6 weeks without being washed and is terribly muddy. Can't you get in by yourself? Asked the sister gently. Why, yes, I say in a sweat, but take off the bed cover first. What for? I feel like a pig. Must I get in there? It will get, I hesitate, a little bit dirty, she suggests helpfully. That doesn't matter. We'll wash it again afterwards. No, no, not that, I say excitedly. I am not equal to such overwhelming refinement. So here he is even feeling guilty about the pleasure of having white sheets. He doesn't feel like his soul is white anymore, that he doesn't feel innocent anymore. This is the author's way of showing us through metaphor and through symbols. The white sheets are a symbol of the innocence that he doesn't want to dirty anymore because his soul is now dirty from having killed people and been in the war. When you've been lying out there in the trenches, surely we can wash a sheet, she goes on. I look at her. She is young and crisp and spotless and neat, like everything here. A man cannot realize that it isn't for officers only, and feels himself strange and in some way even alarmed. All the same, the woman is a tormentor. She is going to force me to say it. It is only... I try again. Surely she must know what I mean. What is it then? Because of the lice, I bawl out at last. She laughs. Well, they must have a good day for once, too. Now, I don't care anymore. I scramble into bed and pull up the covers. A hand gropes over the bed cover. The sergeant major, he goes off with the cigars. An hour later, we notice we are moving. I wake up during the night. Crop is restless too. The train rides easily over the rails. I cannot realize it at all yet. A bed, a train, a house. Albert, I whisper. Yes? Do you know where the latrine is? The door is on the right, I think. I'm going to have a look. It is dark. I grope for the edge of the bed and cautiously try to slide down, but my foot finds no support. I begin to slip. The plaster leg is no help, and with a crash I lie on the floor. Damn, I say. Have you bumped yourself? Asks Crop. You could hear that well enough for yourself, I growl. My head. A door opens at the rear of the car. The sister comes with a light and looks at me. He has fallen out of bed. She feels my pulse and smooths my forehead. You haven't any fever, though. No, I agree. Have you been dreaming, then? She says. She asks. Perhaps. I evade. That means I don't tell her the truth. I ignore her question. I try and hide from her question. Hide. Evade is to hide. The interrogation starts again. She looks at me with her clear eyes, and the more wonderful and sweet she is, the less am I able to tell her what I want. I am lifted up into bed again. That will be all right. As soon as she goes, I must try to climb down again. If she were an old woman, it might be easier to say what a man wants. But she is so very young, at the most 25. It can't be done. I can't possibly tell her that he wants to go to the bathroom. He's ashamed. He's embarrassed. Then Albert comes to my rescue. He is not bashful. It makes no difference to him who is upset. He calls to the sister. She turns around. Sister, he wants... But no more does Albert know how to express it modestly and decently. Out there, we say it in a single word, but here, to such a lady, all at once he remembers his school days and finishes hastily. He wants to leave the room, sister. Ah, says the sister, but he shouldn't climb out of bed with his bed with plaster bandage. What do you want then? She says, turning to me. I am in mortal terror at this turn, for I haven't any idea what the things are called professionally. She comes to my help. Little or big? Shocking business. I sweat like a pig and say, well, only quite a little one. You know, he's saying, how big does he need to poop or pee? At any rate, it produces the effort. I get a bottle. After a few hours, I am no longer the only one, and by morning we are quite accustomed to it and ask for what we want without any false modesty. The train travels slowly. Sometimes it halts and the dead are unloaded. It halts often. The train halting often to get rid of the dead is a huge thing. Albert is feverish. I don't feel too bad. I have some pain, but the worst of it is that apparently there are still lice under the plaster bandage. They itch terribly and I cannot scratch myself. We sleep through the days. The country glides quietly past the window. The third night we hear Herbestal. I hear from the sister that Albert is to be put off at the next station because of his fever. How far does the train go, I ask. To Cologne. Cologne is in France. Albert, I say, we stick together, you see. On the sister's next round, I hold my breath and press it up into my head. My face swells and turns red. She stops. Are you in pain? Yes, I groan, all of a sudden. She gives me a thermometer and goes on. I would not have been under Kat's tuition if I did not know what to do now. These army thermometers are not made for old soldiers. All one has to do is drive the quicksilver up, and then it stays without falling again. I stick the thermometer under my arm and at a slant and flip it steadily with my forefinger. Then I give it a shake. I send it up to 100.2, but that is not enough. A match held cautiously near to it brings it up to 101.6. As the sister comes back, I blow myself out, breathe in short gasps, goggle at her with vacant eyes, toss about restlessly, and mutter in a whisper, I can't bear it any longer. She notes me down on a slip of paper. I know perfectly well my plaster bandage will not be reopened if it can be avoided. Albert and I are put off together. So he has tricked the sister into believing, he's told Albert that he's going to stay with him no matter what. Again, this comradeship, this friendship. We are in the same room in a Catholic hospital. That is a piece of luck. The Catholic infirmaries are noted for their good treatment and good food. The hospital has been filled up from our train. There are a great many bed cases among them. We do not get examined today because there are too few surgeons. The flat trolleys with their rubber wheels pass continually along the corridor, and always with someone stretched at full length upon them. A damnable position, stretched out full length like that. The only time it is good is when one is asleep. The night is very disturbed. No one can sleep. Toward morning, we doze a little. I wake up just as it grows light. The doors stand open and I hear voices from the corridor. The others wake up too. One fellow who has been there a couple of days already explains it to us. Up here in the corridor, every morning the sisters say prayers. They call it morning devotion. And so that you can get your share, they leave the door open. No doubt it is well meant, but it gives us aches in our heads and bones. Such an absurdity, I say, just when a man dropped off to sleep. All the light cases are up here. That's why they do it here, he replies. Albert groans. I get furious and call out, Be quiet out there! A minute later, a sister appears. In her black and white dress, she looks like a beautiful tea cozy. That means a thing that goes over a teapot to keep it warm. Shut the door, will you, sister, says someone. We are saying prayers, and that is why the door is open, she responds. But we want to get on sleeping. Prayer is better than sleeping. She stands there and smiles innocently. And it is 7 o'clock already. Albert groans again. Shut the door, I snort. She is quite disconcerted. She's upset. Apparently, she cannot understand. But we are saying prayers for you too. Shut the door anyway. She disappears, leaving the door open. The intoning of the litany proceeds. The prayers keep going. I feel savage and say, I'm going to count up to 3. If it doesn't stop before then, I'll let something fly. Me too, says another. I count up to 5. Then I take hold of a bottle, aim, and heave it through the door into the corridor. It smashes into 1,000 pieces. The praying stops. A swarm of sisters appear and reproach us in concert. That's a metaphor. They're not bees. Shut the door, we yell. They withdraw. The little one who came first is the last to go. Heathen, she chirps, but shuts the door all the same. We have won. Part of the point of this is you can pray all you want, but if we're in pain, the better part of charity is to let us sleep, is to let them sleep. And so, in a very vague way, not really hitting us over the head, the author is trying to say to us, what good is God and what good are prayers if we're still suffering like this? Where do prayers have a place in the innocence in those minds in this kind of situation? As soon as the hospital inspector arrives and abuses us, at noon, the hospital inspector arrives and abuses us. He threatens us with clink, that means jail, and all the rest of it. But a hospital inspector is just the same as a commissariat inspector or anyone else who wears a long sword and shoulder straps, but is really just a clerk. and is never considered even by a recruit as a real officer, so we let him talk. What could they do to us anyway? Who threw the bottle, he asks. Before I can think whether I should report myself, someone says, I did. A man with a bristling beard sits up. Everyone is excited. Why should he report himself? You? Yes, I was annoyed because we were waked up unnecessarily and lost my senses so that I did not know what I was doing. He talks like a book. What is your name? Reinforcement Reservist Joseph Hamaker. The inspector departs. We are all curious. But why did you say you did it? It wasn't you at all, he grins. That doesn't matter. I have a shooting license. Then, of course, we all understand. Whoever has a shooting license can do just whatever he pleases. I'm not sure why. Yes, he explains. I got a crack in the head and they presented me with a certificate to say that I was periodically not responsible for my actions. Ever since then, I've had a grand time. No one dares to annoy me, and nobody does anything to me. I reported myself because the shot amused me. If they open the door again tomorrow, we will pitch another. They are overjoyed. We are overjoyed. With Joseph Hamaker in our midst, we can now risk anything. Then come the soundless, flat trolleys to take us away. The bandages are stuck fast. We bellow like steers. Steers are cows, male cows. And when we bellow, that means we yell because they change the bandages that are stuck to them. So at the end of this section of chapter 10, Paul and Crop have gone on to the hospital. They're heading towards home to be, they're being treated and they're heading towards home. And so you want to look at some of the bigger picture ideas, don't forget. And point of view, irony is big in this one. And what is it that the author wants us to know when he uses irony such as he does? Okay, next up, chapter 10, section 2.